You ever look at a Pokemon move and go, I've seen you before? Yeah, me too. Well, this is pretty common, and out of roughly 900 uniquely named moves, dozens are basically just rebranded versions of each other. Take the Elemental Fangs for example, 65 base power, 95% accurate biting moves with a 10% chance to inflict a status condition and another 10% chance to flinch. We're going to cover moves that vary in type, but otherwise are nearly identical in their other effects. Quick note, I'm skipping over status moves with copy-paste effects or clone attacks like false swipe and hold back. Already covered those in another video. Let's move to the first one. Giga Drain was introduced in Gen 2 as a stronger draining attack. Drain Punch was introduced 2 gens later as a physical counterpart. These moves were originally 60 base power, but eventually buffed to 75 in Gen 5. These twins grew a third head counterpart the same gen with Horn Leech, a physical grass type draining move. They all sport 75 power, restore up to 50% of the damage dealt, have 100% accuracy and 10 PP. Another common trope is the 120 base power attacks that deal recoil damage to the user. This includes moves like Double Edge, Brave Bird, Wood Hammer, and Wave Crash. The cost of having a reliable, strong attack is apparently receiving 1/3 of the damage back at you. Flare Blitz and Volt Tackle fit here too, but are more variations of each other as they get that additional 10% chance to inflict a status. Head Charge is also just a better Double Edge, having the user take a little bit less recoil, but I thought I ought to mention it before the comment section please revoke my YouTube license. The more recoil you take, the better the moves Reversal and Flail become. These physical attacks have the same damage scaling, powering up as your HP depletes. They match accuracy and PP as well. Just one of them is a potentially scary late game sweeping attack, and the other one mostly associated with Magikarp. On the flip side, moves like Eruption, Water Spout, and Dragon Energy reward you for staying healthy. These moves all come in at 150 base power at full HP and lose power when the user takes damage. They scale on the same formula as well, having the same PP and accuracy, the only difference being the typing and names. If you're using those HP dependent moves, you might want to steer clear from the moves Jump Kick and Supercell Slam. These 100 base power attacks sport a 95% chance to hit, which seems pretty good, but if you miss or strike into an immunity or protect, you'll take 50% of your max HP and crash damage, which seems a little excessive for 100 base power. Still salty they didn't make Supercell Slam an electric high jump kick. Physical electric types really need the boost in firepower. Perhaps the most obvious example of reskinned moves are the Elemental Punches. These 75 base power attacks have 100% accuracy and a 10% chance to inflict the status of the related typings. There are actually 2 other moves that use this template, which are Signal Beam and Relic Song. Relic Song takes care of the sleep status, while Signal Beam occupies the confusion status. The move's stored power gains 20 base power for every positive stat change the user has. 2 generations after this was introduced, a Dark type variation followed in Power Trip. This is a physical counterpart that shares its effect, accuracy, and PP, but also has the advantage of not having a type immune to it. I didn't forget about the big and voluptuous mons. We have the moves Heavy Slam and Heat Crash next. These are physical attacks with power depending on the user's weight in comparison to the target. They scale on the same formula while having 100% accuracy and 10 PP. They're also pretty good to run on the same set, but you know what they say, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. The moves Low Kick and Grass Knot punish the big boys. These moves inflict damage depending on the target's weight, with heavier targets taking more damage. They scale on the same formula once again with 100% accuracy and 20 PP. It's good to know that Low Kick used to function differently, and its effect was changed to function by weight in Generation 3. Grass Knot was introduced as a special grass type variation the next gen, giving weight a bit more reason to matter in the games. There's actually so many of these moves to fire through, so I'm going to mention that I'm working on a big project with every Pokemon in one huge Metronome tournament. It's an over 1100 Pokemon free-for-all. I posted the brackets and need your predictions on who you think will take the win. It's like gambling, but with slightly better odds and way more Wobbuffet. More info in the description for voting and bracket predictions. best picks get a feature in the video, so stay tuned for streams where you can root for your favorite mons and bracket picks, and a video covering the results once it's over. Dig and Dive are two moves that share an 80 base power, 100% accuracy, and have a charging turn where the user is semi-invulnerable. Funnily enough, they both have two moves that specifically hit them and deal double damage if they're in this semi-invulnerable state. I'm blazing through these pretty fast because there's a ton to cover, so let's speed up with Flame Charge and Trailblaze, two 50 base power attacks that raise the user's speed by one stage. But speed means nothing when you're using Circle Throw or Dragon Tail. These moves have -6 priority, 60 base power, 90% accuracy, and force a target to swap out if directly hit by them. Those phasing moves are good enough to stop the next powerhouse attacks and Rollout and Ice Ball. Gen 2 Rollout was so nice, they made it twice. These moves are both 90 accuracy attacks starting at 30 base power. They lock the user in using it as long as it keeps hitting. The power of these moves doubles each turn for a max of 5 turns. They also can be further increased by the move Defense Curl for anyone who wasn't aware of this cheeky mechanic. Speaking of cheeks, the moves Inferno and Dynamic Punch are both cheeks on accuracy. These 50% accurate moves both come in at 100 base power and guarantee some sort of status. This one I'm a little more lenient with, since Dynamic Punch causing confusion is only a temporary status condition, while Inferno's burn is permanent. Zap Cannon was formerly a variation as well, until it decided it wanted a power buff to 120 base power in Gen 4. More luck-based moves flying at you with the 10% Omni Boost attacks. Ancient Power, Silver Wind, and Ominous Wind are all 60 base power special attacks that double as lottery tickets. They each can raise all your stats by one stage, which is a pretty cool effect to fish for when you have the opportunity. No idea who's really running these moves competitively though. Probably the same people who use Metronome. To ignore those Ancient Power Omni Boosts, you can just grab a crit. We have plenty of moves that have a high chance to do that. Slash, Night Slash, Shadow Claw, Psycho Cut, and Aqua Cutter are all 70 base power physical attacks sporting a high crit ratio and 100% accuracy. Cross Poison fits here too, but also has a bonus 10% chance to inflict poison. Outside of Shadow Claw, all these moves are also boosted by the Sharpness ability, further cementing themselves as reskins of each other. Stepping it up a bit with the high crit moves, we have Leaf Blade and Attack Order. These are 90 base power high crit rate moves with 100% accuracy. I'm gonna step away from the high crit moves because I'm just realizing how many signature moves are either reskinned versions of regular moves or had moves modeled after them. Crabominal's Ice Hammer is just Hammer Arm but colder. Both sport 90% accuracy, 100 base power, are boosted by Iron Fist, and will lower your speed stat by one stage after usage. Another signature move from Alola is Shadow Bone, Marowak's signature move that shares the same properties with Liquidation. 80 base power, 100% accuracy, and a 20% chance to drop the user's defense by one stage. Pretty solid moves all around. Less solid moves come with our next example of a reskin signature move. This is Regigigas' signature move, Crush Grip, just being a physical variant of Ring Out. They work exactly the same, and funnily enough, with Slow Start active, Ring Out would probably be a better option for Regigigas, at least before it gets it going. A really interesting example that fits this category comes with the move Thunderclap. This newer move is a Raging Bolt exclusive Sucker Punch variant. It's a special electric attack that shares the same power, priority, accuracy, and effect of Sucker Punch. They will only work if the opponent chooses an attacking move that turn, otherwise they fail to do damage. And then we have signature moves that are reskins of other signature moves. We have Lugia's Aeroblast at 95% accuracy and 100 base power. It sports a high crit ratio, making it a threatening attack. This was so nice they gave Palkia the same move, just changing it to Dragon type with Spatial Rend. This also happened inside the same generation, which I feel makes more sense. The Gen 7 legendaries gain signature moves with 100 base power, 100% accuracy, and a secondary effect of ignoring all ignorable abilities. These are the moves Sunsteel Strike, Moongeist Beam, and Photon Geyser. 3 different types, but the same premise to them. Photon Geyser does have a unique attribute of being able to switch from physical to special depending on the user's superior stat. They followed this up in Sword and Shield on their legendaries. Zacian and Zamazenta sport essentially identical signature moves in Behemoth Bash and Blade at 100 base power and 100% accuracy. But this was also given to their rival Eternatus, with Dynamax Cannon also being 100 base power and accuracy. They all additionally have the effect of doubling in power against Dynamax Pokemon to take advantage of their generation's gimmick. The trend was continued in Gen 9, as I'm starting to see a lack of creativity here, kinda pole vaulting over the fine line of consistency and recycling. The box art legends have 100 base power attacks of the respective stabs in Collision Course and Electro Drift. These moves each gain an additional boost when hitting super effectively, making them one-shot machines in those cases. At least those signature variations are viable moves. The moves Freeze Shock and Ice Burn though, not so much. 140 base power, 90% accurate, and take a turn to charge before hitting. They have a 30% chance to inflict a status condition, but even that can't save these moves, which funnily enough are essentially Sky Attack clones themselves. Instead of a 30% status chance, there's a high flinch chance, but also a high critical hit ratio. I think it's safe to say we don't need any more variations of these moves. Fusion Flare and Fusion Bolt are ones I had to circle back to. They are pretty bland by themselves, both coming in at 100 base power and accuracy, but they actually interact with each other, being powered up in a double battle if using them in the same turn. A unique characteristic to this list, kind of. We have to also mention the Pledge moves, 80 base power elemental attacks sporting the water, grass, and fire types. Pledge moves only become interesting when you pair them up. Alone, they're just 3 underachievers. These attacks have unique interactions with each other in double battles, summoning various field conditions. Taking a break from signature moves for now, I have the pivoting moves U-Turn and Volt Switch. These are premier attacking moves that strike before allowing the user to swap into an ally in the same turn. They sport 70 base power and 100% accuracy, performing the same function. Next we have the moves where you just steal your opponent's held item. These are Thief and Covet, 60 base power attacks that will take an item from the target if the user isn't holding one themselves. Similar to those moves are Pluck and Bug Bite. Weaker attacks also at 60 base power, but both having the secondary effect of consuming and taking the effect of a target's held berry when hitting them. A little more versatile since you can do this while still holding your own item. We also have weaker move variations with a small secondary effect chance. These being Aurora Beam and Bubble Beam. 65 power, 100 accuracy, with a 10% chance to lower a stat. Psy Beam also kind of works here, with a 10% chance to confuse a target, so I'll throw it in as a near variation. Stronger than those are the 80 base power, 100 accuracy attacks, Crunch and Shadow Ball, which double those previously mentioned moves' secondary effect chances, giving 20% chances to lower the target's defense and special defense stats respectively. Flash Cannon fits here too, but only has a 10% chance to lower the target's special defense, which is odd since it's not like Steel is a crazy powerful typing offensively. Most trapping attacks tend to follow set parameters. Fire Spin, Whirlpool, Sand Tomb, and Clamp all rock 35 base power and 85% accuracy. If they hit, the target will be trapped for 4 to 5 turns, taking 1/8 of their max HP and damage at the end of each turn. These were all buffed pretty hard as well, as they used to be weaker, less accurate, and do less residual damage. Some other moves that were buffed are the multi-strike attacks Bullet Seed and Icicle Spear. These attacks will hit 2 to 5 times, with each hit doing 25 base power and damage. This is significantly better than the 10 base power they previously had. They share the same odds on the amount of hits they will produce as well. They have less accurate counterparts in Bone Rush and Rock Blast, who could have been included if there wasn't an unwritten rule that rock type attacks aren't allowed to have 100% accuracy. At least it has a friend to relate to with Bone Rush, who also comes in at 90% accuracy. How about moves that just don't have a secondary effect? It's pretty rare for moves to not have anything else going on, but we do have some. The moves Drill Peck, Dragon Claw, Strength, Seed Bomb, X Scissor, and Power Gem just inflict damage with 80 base power and 100% accuracy. Don't expect to get much else out of these moves. Sure, some of them can be boosted by certain abilities, but they are basically just standard damaging moves shuffled to different types. There are plenty of early game moves that are just downgraded versions of the previous moves. The normal type Scratch, Pound, and sometimes Tackle, depending on the gen, will all produce the same effect as other moves like Fairy Wind, Leafage, Gust, and Branch Poke, 40 base power moves with 100 accuracy that don't provide anything special. Then we have the 40 base power early game moves that do have the potential for something more. These include Ember, Acid, Bubble, Thundershock, and Powder Snow. They all have a 10% chance to provide their unique secondary effects. Powder Snow, Bubble, and Acid are spread moves, which sort of puts them in their own category as they hit both targets in a double battle, so extra credit there. After those starting moves, we have some mid-game moves that are actually pretty decent, these being Spark and Sludge, 65 base power, 100 accuracy, with a great 30% chance to inflict their respective statuses. Almost good enough for competitive, but not quite there. Let's get through these next ones quick. Aqua Jet, Accelerock, Quick Attack, Shadow Sneak, Ice Shard, and Vacuum Wave. All 40 base power priority attacks with 100% accuracy. Gives more Pokemon fitting priority to run. Then we have Mach Punch and Bullet Punch that definitely fit in here too, but they're punching moves, giving them a boost with Iron Fist, which is enough for me to mention them separately. Slowly, we have Avalanche and Revenge. These are negative priority attacks that come in at 60 base power. They will double in power if the user takes a hit before the move is used, boosting them to a real strong 120 base power. Definitely good on slower mons who are going to move second anyways. Those are sort of similar to the moves Counter and Mirror Coat, which I will admit are questionable to include here. These are also negative priority attacks. They will deal double the damage the user receives on the turn they're used. The difference being Counter will reflect physical damage, while Mirror Coat will reflect special damage. Same concept, just interacting with the physical and special sides respectively. Seismic Toss and Nightshade are counterparts that do fixed damage depending on the level of the user. They just swap their typing, giving a different immunity to each. I hope not to miss any moves, especially not the next ones in Swift, Aerial Ace, Magnet Bomb, Feint Attack, Shockwave, Shadow Punch, and Magical Leaf. These moves share the trait of not being able to miss, even through accuracy, and evasion, or abilities. They are the standard perfect accuracy moves, all having 60 base power and no other secondary effect. Now for some moves with great secondary effects, I have Discharge and Lava Plume. These are 80 base power attacks that have 30% chances to inflict paralysis and burn respectively. The great 30% status comes at a cost of a bit of power compared to moves like Flamethrower, Thunderbolt, and Ice Beam, who sport a greater 90 base power but only have a 10% chance to activate their respective statuses. Near counterparts to those are the 90 base power attacking moves of other types that don't have a status condition directly associated with them, so they just have a 10% chance to drop special defense instead. These are Bug Buzz, Psychic, Earth Power, and Energy Ball, great reliable attacks with a small bonus chance to do something. We're getting into the last third of this video, still tons of reskin moves to cover. Let me know which move variations are your favorite to use. Mine might be Fishious Wren and Bolt Beak. These signature Gen 8 fossil moves each have 85 base power, 100% accuracy, and the busted effect of doubling in power if the user moves before the target. We are very lucky these overpowered moves are limited to mons without crazy stats. Another busted pair of signature moves come in the form of Ceaseless Edge and Stone Axe. These moves share 65 base power, 90% accuracy, and each set up entry hazards when hitting. Ceaseless Edge sets up a layer of spikes, while Stone Axe lays down stealth rocks. Adding to this, they are each boosted by the ability Sharpness, which their users get to take advantage of. I'm throwing a stomping tantrum trying to get through these all. This ground type attack shares the same 75 base power and 100% accurate characteristics as Temper Flare. But what makes them reskins are their additional effect of doubling in power if the last move the user used failed. Fails most often consist of the moves missing, which brings us to our next variations. Thunder, Blizzard, and Hurricane are moves that all interact with weather. These 110 base power attacks are pretty risky to use at 70 base power, but they all have perfect accuracy in their respective weathers. Thunder and Hurricane each have 30% secondary effects, while luckily Blizzard only has a 10% chance for its secondary effect. So not factoring in this, these moves are very, very similar. We have some flinching moves to cover next. First off is the early game move Bite, which has a 30% flinch chance to go with its 60 base power and 100 accuracy. This is accompanied by the often forgotten Heart Stamp, which shares these properties to a T, but sports the psychic typing instead of dark. Slightly better flinching moves come next, as we have Stomp and Steamroller, another forgettable move. They bump out a technician range at 65 base power and have the same juicy 30% flinch chance. They also add a unique feature of being anti-minimize techs, doubling in power if the target has used minimize while bypassing accuracy checks. The moves Waterfall and Dark Pulse up the power but lower the flinch odds. 80 base power, 100% accurate attacks that have a 20% chance to flinch a target. These are solid moves, but can feel a bit underwhelming when you compare them to Zing Zap and Iron Head. They share the 80 base power and 100% accuracy, but they sport a better 30% flinch chance, which you can definitely feel when using these moves, as they tend to flinch a lot more. Now that the flinching moves are out of the way, I just want to remind you that I hold monthly showdown tournaments in my Discord channel that I stream on YouTube. We mainly do randomized formats that viewers vote on, so if this interests you, feel free to hop in and join the community. How about stat lowering moves? We have you covered. Icy Wind and Electro Web are both 55 base power spread moves with 95% accuracy and a guaranteed speed drop. Mudshot joins these two, sporting the same effect, but it lacks the utility of hitting both targets in a double battle, so it is more of a variation for singles. Snarl should also be mentioned, as it has a 55 base power, 95% accuracy features, but lowers special attack instead of speed. Grav Apple and Fire Lash are really reliable stat lowering attacks, each hitting at a powerful 80 base power and having a guaranteed defense drop as a secondary effect. Apple Acid is a special variation of this with the same power, just lowering special defense instead. Then we have the downgraded versions of these moves in Crush Claw and Razor Shell. The cost of being more accessible is a lower 75 base power and 95% accuracy, along with just a 50% chance to lower the target's defense by one stage. Sometimes stat lowering moves come with a side of irony though. The moves Octazooka, Mirror Shot, and Mud Bomb hit at 65 base power and come with a 30% chance to lower the target's accuracy by a stage. But they themselves have 85% accuracy. Let's just say there's a reason these move variations aren't more popular. Reliability is big, and 85% accuracy doesn't usually cut it, unless you entice the user with amazing power. This can be seen with the moves Power Whip, Mega Horn, and Precipice Blades. Yep, these two are a variation of Groudon's signature nuke. 120 base power can convince you to equip these risky moves. None of these have a secondary effect, but Precipice Blades is a spread attack, so in doubles it can hit both targets, which makes it somewhat unique. Sometimes typing and move comparables determine if a move will be used competitively. The move Cross Chop definitely sees a lot less competitive usage than Stone Edge, but these moves both have 100 base power, 80% accuracy, and a high critical hit ratio. Stone Edge is just seen a lot more since you aren't really getting strong and accurate physical rock type moves, so it is just the option if you don't want to stick with the weaker and still inaccurate Rock Slide. Cross Chop, on the other hand, has a powerful and very distributed Close Combat, which is a move with a ton of variations. Close Combat is of the 120 base power, 100% accuracy, and lower both defenses by one stage family. The great moves that accompany it are Dragon Ascent, Headlong Rush, and Armor Cannon, two signature moves and one with very low distribution. All these moves are strong and reliable, but with obvious downsides. but not too large to stop you from using them, like these next few moves. Thrash, Petal Dance, Raging Fury, and Outrage are moves that lock you in using them for 2 to 3 turns. It is a side effect of their incredible 120 base power. They also confuse you once you're done flailing around at the target. Outside of Raging Fury, which was added in Gen 9, these moves were definitely never worth the move slot, as they only came in between 70 to 90 base power. But they were eventually buffed in Gen 4, in Outrage's case, in Gen 5 for Thrash and Petal Dance. Outrage is really the only move that has seen good competitive usage, outside of niche cases like Own Tempo Lilligant. They also all choose a random target in double battles, making them pretty much unviable in those formats. Some powerful moves with downsides that do get use are the moves Overheat, Lee Storm, Draco Meteor, and Floor Cannon. These nukes come in at 130 base power and 90% accuracy, but the cost of this is lowering the user's special attack by 2 stages. Pretty harsh, but apparently worth it since all these moves see used competitively. Some honorable mentions I have to give a shout out are Brine, Venoshock, and Hex, which each come in at 65 power and 100% accuracy and can double in power if a condition is met. The Genie's signature storm moves all rock 100 base power, 80% accuracy, and are spread attacks, but do have differences. Wild Bolt Storm and Sandsear Storm are the closest, as they have 20% chances to activate a status condition as their secondary effect, while Blake Wind and Springtide Storm have 30% chances to lower a stat, speed and attack respectively. Springtide Storm has half the amount of PP for some reason, while also being the only one of these variations that doesn't gain perfect accuracy in the rain, which is kinda just a big middle finger to Enamorus, the newest addition to the Genies. And last for the honorable mentions are Barbarage and Infernal Parade. Very much the same concept of 60 base power signature moves that have a status chance and can double in power with status. The differences being Barbarage having a 50% poison chance compared to Infernal Parade's 30% chance to burn. But Infernal Parade is more flexible in doubling in power if the target has any status condition. To finish off this video, I give you the most reskinned move in the game. This is Hyper Beam. Hyper Beam has so many clones on both the physical and special side. 150 base power cheek clappers with 90% accuracy and a recharge turn immediately after use. We have the starter type variations in Blast Burn, Hydro Cannon, and Frenzy Plant, along with one of the saddest legendary signature moves with Dialga's Roar of Time. Then we have the physical variants in Giga Impact and Rock Wrecker. These are only the exact variations as well, as there is still a few signature moves that don't quite fit this criteria. Meteor Assault is a recharge attack with 150 base power, but doesn't have the dreaded 90% accuracy, while Eterna Beam does have the 90% accuracy, but a great 160 base power. Then we have the show off of the group, Prismatic Laser, which has 100% accuracy and the greater 160 base power to boot. The nerve of that move. I don't know about you buds, but that felt like a marathon for me covering all those move variations. Let me know if I left any out that you were expecting. Special shout out to Bulbapedia for helping gather these up quickly. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out this one next. Thanks to my Patreon and YouTube members for supporting the channel, including Gold Bud Mr. Frank Beans. Thanks for watching buds, I'll see you soon.